Well, that makes sense now. I bet that's better. Yeah, different platform didn't have sound. Okay, should we just jump into this? I'm waiting to be prepared on the inside of myself, and it's just not happening, so it never happens. I was thinking this time might be different. Could feel like I know what I'm doing. Okay. I'm going to take my minute or two and just allow myself to be here. And then we'll get started. Welcome to the program. This is Holding Space for Love to Be Seen. I'm hanging out for about an hour, broadcasting live. And I'm going to talk about things. Although, to be quite honest, I don't know what I want to talk about yet. But I have a feeling it's going to come to me. I do have a title for today's episode, which is an extension of yesterday's Monday Insight letter, which was called 3 Unconscious Beliefs That Limit Your Growth and Joy. Maybe I'll talk about that. I don't know. But I'm giving myself some flexibility here. Kind of reminding myself I don't really have to talk about that. I can if that's what happens. But I don't like the expectation that I should talk about that when maybe something in me doesn't really want to talk about that. So we're just going to see. Welcome to the program. maybe I'll just hang out here and answer questions from the live audience. And then afterwards, towards the end, the plan is to do a short, sweet guided meditation. Maybe that'll happen. But let's be here together and see where this thing goes. I guess I can start off by sharing an insight that I had and that I've been contemplating. And that revolves around investigating the limitation that I might experience in my life, what we might call the lack of experiencing the things I'd like to experience. How much of that is a result of beliefs in nonsense? How much is that is a result of me believing my mind's assumptions about myself, about life, about others, when behind those assumptions, there's only a profound permission for me to move in whatever way deeply resonates. And of course, this was the inspiration for the insight letter that I wrote, 3 unconscious beliefs that limit your growth and joy. So maybe what I'll do here is speak briefly about what I wrote yesterday, the short version. And then I want to possibly shift gears into another topic that relates to, let's say, being at peace with things and allowing the heart to expand. That sounds more exciting to me right now than this original title. So maybe if you're watching the recording, it doesn't have the title of 3 unconscious beliefs. It has a different one. I don't know. We'll find out. But in yesterday's insight letter, I shared 3 beliefs that I had that were incredibly limiting. And so I'm going to share those and you can see how it relates to your own experience. The first one is a belief that says, how I see life is the way life is. This is an assumption. It's an assumption that as I go through my experience, I'm looking out, I'm looking at things, I'm interpreting, I'm giving meaning. And then the belief is in my projection that what I think I'm seeing, is the way that it is. And this is quite fascinating to see behind, because the invitation is to realize that nothing is the way that you see it. So much to say that as we live our human experience, we're not experiencing life out there. We are experiencing what we turn it into. We're experiencing our creation. And this continues to be profound for me, because in one instance, you think you get it, you think you understand. And then after a little bit of time, it just blows your mind again and again. And it blows our mind because it's so incredibly easy to be captured by our perception that believes life is the way that we think it is. We can believe that other people are the way that we think they are. We think we are the way that we think we are. When really all of that is just a particular frame of reference. It's a particular angle from which you view something. And notably, what it shows me is that what I ultimately end up seeing is what I'm looking for. That's fascinating. Because why else would I see that if I'm not looking for it? Now, again, there's infinite experiences that can appear to arise and fall in this human experience, whether it's a torrential downpour or a war going on in some part of the world, or a friend and family member dies. We can think, oh, well, I'm not creating those experiences. Those things are just happening. But actually, when we look at the nature of experience, there's this opportunity to see that all of those things that are happening don't mean anything. They don't mean anything outside of your creation of meaning. In one way, we can say it's just happening. This is what's happening. Someone dies, it's like, that's what happens. There's no interpretation that says it should or it shouldn't be, or it's the right time or it's not the right time, or you're excited about it or you're sad about it. Your experience of that happening is based on what you turn it into, what you think it means. And the part that's so limiting in this is that when you believe in your belief, your perception, ultimately what you end up doing is blaming the experience for the experience that you're having, not realizing that your experience is based on what you see as happening. It's in some way saying that, oh, because this is happening in life, it's making me have the experience that I'm having, not seeing that the experience I'm having is in response to what I turn this into. And again, to whatever degree you can see that, you can probably also see how much and how often we don't see that. How much we go through our life believing that how we see things is the way that they really are. And for me, it's a great doorway into a softness and a simplicity as I see more and more that I'm just experiencing my own seeing. That there's nothing happening in the world that can make me create an interpretation, which is also like saying that can make me feel a particular way. And the more you see this, the more you also recognize that the world and circumstance isn't enacting some force against you. Life is just doing what life is doing. And then I get to experience how I interpret that life happening. And whatever I experience, I'm in some way doing it to myself. I guess for some that's terrifying, that's threatening, and for others it's extraordinarily empowering. But because it's empowering because you start realizing that you're not bound by circumstance. You're not bound by the world. This is just another way of saying that you're free. So that's the first one. The second one is a belief that says my emotions tell me what's true. And this builds upon the first one. But I find this incredibly fascinating because there is definitely a time when I would look to my emotional experience to tell me what's true in such a way that if I encountered an obstacle, there might be a emotional experience that is afraid, which also comes with a lot of emotions that say, this isn't safe, I shouldn't explore this. It's a fear response that arises. And then I would look at that fear response and use that to keep myself from moving through a particular obstacle. And likewise, I might encounter something and be excited about it, and then feel like that excitement meant that it was true, meant that it was going to work out, meant that it was for me. And through this adventure, what I found was just constant disappointment, right? I love the example of being excited about something. Like, how many times have we had emotional responses to opportunity, and then we dive into that opportunity and we find out that it's not what we thought. It didn't end up how we thought it was going to end up. And maybe in a way we thought that because we were excited that it meant that it was true, that it was right for us. And my point being is that the emotional response, it's not telling me anything about life. It's just giving me a feedback about how I'm perceiving. When I perceive something as for me or against me, that's not telling me that it is for me or against me. It's just telling me how I'm perceiving. And there's this opportunity to maybe look at life a little bit more objectively without looking to our emotions to tell us what's true. And my goodness, I think that's really important. That might be a little bit more difficult for women than it is for men, because women are usually more beautifully emotional creatures. But yet the opportunity remains where we can step behind the emotional experience and not so much connect it directly with what's happening, but allow the emotion to show us what we're believing. And this is really great for when there's negative emotional experience, because the negative emotional experience, if you look at it, it will show you that you are believing yourself to be less than. And so that pain response of the negative emotion is in some way trying to help you see yourself more clearly. The way that I like to look at it is when there's negative emotional experience, it's essentially trying to show me that I'm not seeing myself clearly. And there's so many examples of this as we live our lives. A lot of times when we encounter opportunity, we will have a conditioned response as seeing ourselves as not enough. And that creates a negative emotion. And therefore we think the negative emotion means that this opportunity isn't for us, when really the opportunity could totally be for you. It could totally be in alignment with an opportunity to grow and expand. And you can see that when you start to look at things a little bit more objectively without a lens of emotion. So that's something to play with for belief number 2. Belief number 3, I'm entitled to what I want. This is a fun one. It's a fun one because it's been so true in my experience that when I get honest about how I used to see life, I had this belief that just because I wanted something, then I should automatically be able to experience that something. And I invite you to see where this either did play out in your experience or currently is playing out in your experience. Where is the assumption that just because I want something, then I should get it? And here's the big shift that I experienced. It was from this sense of entitlement that just because I want it, then I should be able to have it, to an understanding that if I'd like to experience something, then I have to grow into that experience. And the question is, am I willing to grow into that experience? And so the opportunity to grow into that experience is there. In one way, we can say it's kind of our birthright to grow and expand. But the idea that it should just be given to me without me showing up in a way that's ready to receive that is kind of a silly belief. And this belief of entitlement created so much frustration and resentment toward other people in the world, where naturally you can see that if I have that belief that I should just get what I want, and if I don't get it, then it assumes it's being withheld from me. It assumes that other people are withholding it from me. It assumes life is withholding it from me. And man, that creates a very problematic experience. And the other way to go about this is realizing that if there's a sincerity of interest in having a particular experience, and I don't have that experience, it means I haven't yet grown into that experience. I haven't become available for that experience. And so to get really honest with myself about if I'd really like to have that experience, then I have to investigate where I haven't been available for that. We can also look at where am I pushing this away? Because that's kind of the thing with life. It's like, say you want to be at peace. Say you want to feel like you're free. Say you want to feel like you're enough. Well, if you look at that, you'll also see where you're pushing those things away. You also see where you are blaming other people, or you're resenting, or you're holding on to things that limit that experience of peace. And so in one way, yes, you have a natural birthright to peace. However, you have to grow into an understanding that allows the peace to be there. And of course, this is the whole human adventure. This is the journey of growing. And you can see this directly in your own experience in the journey you've been on that now experiences more love, compassion, and freedom. At one point, you wanted those things, but you had to go through a path of growth to be available for those things to be seen. And likewise, if you wanted peace, compassion, and freedom, and you weren't willing to grow into those things, then you would just end up being a resentful person. You would think that your lack of those things was because of other people, because of the world, when really it was only because I did not yet grow into it. Okay, so those are the three unconscious beliefs for me that limit growth. Now I want to shift gears, because maybe you can tell I really don't want to talk about those things. Let me see what else I want to talk about here. It is quite warm behind these lights. Okay. What's actually on my heart? You know what's really captured my heart and attention recently? And I don't know any way to talk about this other than also using the word God. And so I'm just going to give myself permission to use that word, even if you interpret it differently. But what has been bringing me to a very soft space is realizing that in the whole of existence, which we might call God, there is a plan that is so beyond my mind's capacity to understand. And every time my mind tries to understand that plan, I always come to the conclusion that I'll never fully understand it. But yet there's something that's also seen where I can't deny that this something called being human and live is the most divine symphony that gives life to this miracle that we call being alive. And what do I mean by this? That there's a plan. And maybe we can bring a little bit of mental understanding to it, which surely won't capture the whole thing, but maybe it makes some space for the mind to calm down and we see something in our heart. But I was doing a Zoom session yesterday and we were recapping this person's growth, the journey that they had been on. And she was talking about how amazing it is to look back at all these difficult experiences, these challenges, these twists and turns. And it's only now that she's starting to realize that the growth she experienced wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for all of those things. And naturally, I can say the same thing from my experience. That what appears to be the reality of struggle, the reality of sometimes a difficult human experience, within those experiences are seeds of opportunity to grow into a discovery of something beautiful. And it's a beauty that's seen that makes the struggle worth it. And you see, this is part of that plan that when you're going through it, the mind doesn't see that. But yet, looking back, seeing more of the bigger picture, we start to realize, oh, there was an intentionality in this. There was an opportunity in this to help connect me with something more real and authentic. You know, this is very similar to, let's say, God's plan with all the different seasons. We can see that the seasons are very different from each other. But yet, each season, whether you like it or not, plays a fundamental role for planet Earth to be planet Earth. And not only that, but for planet Earth to have its place amongst other planets and other stars and other galaxies. It's like it's all turning in this incredible balance that allows it all to be what it is. Again, whether you like the rain or not, whether you like the cold or not. And naturally, it's so easy to assume that these things shouldn't be the way that they are, right? Because it's uncomfortable, it's inconvenient. But yet, to step back, you recognize, oh, wow, it has to be this way. It has to be this way so that life can be life. which is also to say, for this miracle to be this miracle, for this moment to be here right now. And do you see the immensity of this plan? I mean, when you take into account everything, whether it's the trillions of cells in your body organized and doing what they're doing, some bouncing around in chaos, others beautifully organized, whether it's the 10,000 different animals, different insects, different whatever, all playing their perfect part that maintains this balance. All of that also intertwined into the cosmos that allows life to be life. And then also to have an experience that is beyond description as it relates to touching the divinity in all things. And I imagine for the ones listening to this sort of content, you understand what I'm talking about. Those moments where you see beyond all the mind's noise. You see the divinity in it all, even if your mind can't completely grasp it. There's something in you that knows that this experience is sacred, that there's something beautiful happening. I mean, just the capacity of us as human beings to love each other, our capacity to create, our capacity to share, to be vulnerable, to be human, or even to be with an animal and to see that animal intimately, to look in their eyes and to see that they're awake. There's something sacred going on here. And in the sacredness of that, as it relates to being human, part of that plan allows us to grow in our relationship with that sacredness. And naturally, that growth requires a bit of struggle. Again, struggle being part of the plan. And even though I could go on and on and on about what this plan might be, it's too immense for the mind. But there's something that sees it within what I am that isn't just the mind thinking about it. And as this plan is acknowledged, but not necessarily understood, there's a beautiful surrendering to that plan. There's a surrendering of my own plan. Because again, adorably, my plan, which is created from my mind, which is extraordinarily limited in relationship to God's plan. There's so much that I don't see. It would be quite silly to hold on to my plan as if I knew what life should be doing. And if I ever do have a plan, then let it be the most playful kind of plan, where I acknowledge that I don't really know, but that sounds like fun. Let's see if it aligns with God's plan. Let's find out. I like that attitude, because it deeply acknowledges the reality, the truth, the sincerity that I don't really know. And that's what's beautiful too, is that it's okay that I don't know, because it's true that I don't know. So of course it's okay. It's okay because it's true. Which is so funny because we think we should know. right? Like we think we should have some sort of certainty, as if we could have some sort of certainty. Is that true? Is that true that you can have some sort of certainty? You can think you have certainty, but can you really have it? Or is the dance of life too magnificent to capture? Is it too expansive to actually know what should or shouldn't happen? What is or isn't best? Because again, in looking at our life journey and looking at the struggles we've been through, there was definitely a time where we thought that this struggle isn't best. Right? We thought life was making a mistake. How can I keep trusting my own mind when I have experiences like that? Where I see how wrong I was. Where I see how much I didn't see, yet my mind thought I knew. How much longer am I going to keep trusting the mind? It feels like it's so obvious that I'm more interested in talking about this right now than the other thing. You see, this is what I can be certain about. This is what I can know. I can know that I don't know. And so I can trust what I know. And if it seems like I know, then I can trust that it seems like I know. But do I really know? No. But I can still acknowledge what it seems like. But acknowledging what it seems like is very different from declaring that it is. Because I don't really know that. And you see, it's this embrace of such an unknown that allows myself to relax into a bit of softness. Because sure, there's things on my calendar, there's things on my to-do list, there's things I think I'm supposed to be doing. But do I really know what God's plan is? Do I really know that I'm going to be alive next week? Do I really know that the future is more important than right now? No. And for me, this is the ultimate growth. The growth isn't that I reach some destination in the future where my plan works out. The real growth is an opportunity to become more and more intimate with this love, this softness, this intimacy with the sacred. That's the real value for me. Which is interesting too, because that's the value that I then get to share with the world. And it's in the sharing of that sacred, I find there to be a celebration of the sacred. It's like we come together in this space right now to worship the sacred. What a beautiful celebration that is. Only made possible by the growth. Only made possible by trusting God's plan beyond my own plan. Kind of like in doing this video today, I had a plan, right? I had a topic. I wrote the newsletter yesterday, and I was supposed to spend this hour talking about that plan. And no, that didn't really feel like it was part of God's plan. And so I allow myself to kind of do what I can do, but then shift into what feels more sincere. How torturous it would be to force myself into a plan that doesn't feel like it is the natural plan that's unfolding in life. I love that permission to abandon my plan. That's totally okay. What a beautiful space that is. You know what else is part of the plan? God's plan is the experience of remembering these things and forgetting these things as part of the plan. How easy is it to think that when you forget these things, it's not part of the plan? That you shouldn't forget these things. The forgetting and the remembering, they go together. You can't have one without the other. It's important that we forget so that we can remember. You see, it's the remembering of these things that allows it to transform your experience, that allows the opportunity of growth and expansion. It's almost like if you just knew these things all the time, they wouldn't have vibrancy to them. It's like you would just become dead in what you think you figured out. You see, the forgetting and the remembering, it makes it dynamic. It's almost like you can't have life for a human being without the in-breath and the out-breath. Without it, you're just dead. And so as long as you're alive, there will be the in-breath and the out-breath. There will be the forgetting and the remembering. There will be the contraction and there will be the expansion. And what I see is a beautiful invitation to not control these things, but to surrender to these things. To give the breath back to the breath. To give the contraction back to the contraction so that the expansion can be the expansion. This is also like saying to not resist my own resistance, to not judge my own judgments, to not worry about my worry. You can see how that's the human being getting in the way, trying to get you to not be a human being, as if the plan for human beings is somehow wrong. Right? That resistance for resistance is trusting your own plan. Because we get so afraid of our plan not working out. But when you see there's a bigger plan, when you see that life knows what it's doing, what a beautiful relaxation of our plan. All right, that's what I got for you today. Let's see if there's any questions from those watching live, or if there's anything you want me to speak to. Jennifer asked if I could recap the 3 beliefs? Yes, I can. The first one was, how I see life is the way life is. That's false. Number 2, my emotions tell me what's true. That's false. Number 3, I'm entitled to what I want. False. I have an opportunity to grow into what I would like to experience. But it's a mistake to believe that it should just be given to me. Karma asks, how do I, Tiger, deal with fear? Let me tell you how I deal with fear. First, I try to run away from it. And then I see that that doesn't work. And the sooner I get the message that it doesn't work, the better. And the way that I deal with it, maybe in a beautiful way of saying this, is I don't try and deal with it. I don't try and fix it. I don't try and make it go away. I listen. You know, a great illustration of this is if a child comes to me that's afraid, do I deal with the child or do I listen? Can I just be a loving space that allows the child to be afraid? Because the pattern of discovery here, as it relates to fear, through the growth, what I consistently see is that I'm not afraid of anything in reality. Which again is super profound for me to see again and again. Fear thinks I'm afraid of something that's real. That's why it's afraid. But the more I investigate fear, the more I listen to fear, the more I see that I'm only afraid of my mind's imagination. I'm afraid of the mind's content. And I confuse the mind's content for reality. And the more I try and conquer that fear, the more it's like saying the fear is real. It adds fuel to it. But there's this softness that maybe carries a bit of a meditative space that just holds space for that fear and says, what's the real issue? What's going on? Because again, what fear tries to do is it tries to ignore the real issue. It's kind of like to feel afraid, and you can ask yourself, why am I afraid? And it will start coming up with reasons. It'll start telling stories. But the more you look, it's something more sincere than that. You start tracing the fear back. You start peeling off the layers. And you know what it is ultimately, in a way of speaking? It's, I'm afraid I'm not enough. Right? We could say, oh, I'm afraid this doesn't work out. Well, why? Because I'm afraid that I'm not enough. I'm afraid this person won't like me. Okay, but why are you really afraid? Because I'm afraid I'm not enough. Now imagine a child comes and tells you that. Right? They're lost in their imagination. They're believing things that are impossible. They're identifying with the world around them. And they come to you and they say, I'm afraid I'm not enough. And you say, oh my goodness, come here. You're totally enough. You're just looking for yourself in all the wrong places. You see, they're afraid of what their mind is turning this into, right? Taking things personally that aren't really personal. Attaching meanings and projections to circumstance that aren't really there. Lost in their dream. And that's fine. That's what we do sometimes. It happens. But we can hold a space and not be afraid of that fear. Because to be afraid of fear is like saying, I don't want to see what I'm really afraid of. And so often in society, we prize the suppression of fear. Right? It's like we think it's wrong to be afraid. We think it's wrong to feel inadequate. We think it's wrong to be human. And so we're afraid of being human. So we hide being human. Which means we never actually get to meet ourselves, which is like holding space for that childlike part of ourselves that's genuinely afraid. And what a beautiful encounter to meet that child and hold a loving space. A space that allows you to be afraid because you know there's nothing really to be afraid of. Right? You can see that example with the child who runs to the parent, and we can assume that the parent's unconditionally loving. And the child questions his worth and value. And the loving mother says, oh my God, you're so cute. It's so cute that you would think that you're not enough. I see you. It's so cute that you would think that you're undeserving of love. That's impossible. You see, in asking this question, thanks Amanda, what to do to feel enough, stop trying. You see, in everything you do to be enough, you're reinforcing that you're not enough. Every attempt to try to be enough is saying enough is in the future, which is saying I'm not enough right now. So everything you do to be enough sees yourself as not enough. The path is to see what's true. Right? If you're trying to fix something that's not true, good luck with that. Because every attempt to try and fix it proclaims that it's true. And it puts us in this awkward cycle that goes nowhere. We just exhaust ourselves. And so, in the most classic way, what to do is to be still. Do nothing. See what's true. And rest in that truth. Now, again, I can say do nothing, but that doesn't mean go do the thing called do nothing. The phrase be still, it doesn't mean stop moving. It doesn't mean stop breathing. It doesn't mean stop thinking. It's an invitation that maybe you hear it, maybe you don't. Maybe it's like, be gentle. There's something else going on here that's much more true. Relax into a softness. Maybe. Thanks, Dawn, for the donation. All right, let's do a super short and sweet guided meditation. What will this meditation be called? I don't know. Maybe we can just see what happens. Then I'll come up with the title later. All right, super short and sweet guided meditation. Let's go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wonderful for you to show up today. I'd like to invite you into a space for just a few moments where we can be still, invite some gentleness, and allow ourselves to remember what is here and now. Let's do that. We're going to start by just taking 3 deep breaths and allow ourselves to relax into this moment to whatever degree that you can relax. And if you find that you just can't relax, let's see if we can relax about not being able to relax. Let's breathe. Can we recognize a profound simplicity in this moment right now? I'm not talking about a simplicity in the mind, thinking about 10,000 different things. I'm talking about a simplicity that is here beyond the mind, before the mind. What we used to think was 10,000 different things happening, we realize there's just this. Here right now. Can we just be? Is that okay? We can invite the noise to just fade away. We don't even need an agenda. No demand on what we should get out of this. Let's just be here. You see, my friend, there's this sacred discovery where we recognize that in reality, in this moment right now, there's nothing real to be afraid of. There's nothing missing. And in the reality of this moment, you've been given everything that's real and true. All else we can count as silly illusions. But right here, right now, you're given life in all its glory. You're alive. And life is breathing you, not asking for anything in return. Do you not see the miracle of this? To just be alive? Is that not enough for you? Surely it's not enough for the mind. But you're not the mind. The mind will forever be unsatisfied. Unsatisfied because it chases the unreal. It collects illusions. And so we just come home to what is real. And we see that we are enough. Let's breathe into this one last time. We're going to take 3 deep breaths. And maybe with each exhale, we can whisper silently, "Thank you." Let's breathe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for meditating with me today. All right, lovelies. That was a beautiful time. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for the donations. And I will be back next week according to the imaginary plan. And we'll see if that actually happens. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, tell your friends who you think might enjoy it too. And we will spread the love. Till then, aloha and cheers to the beauty that you already are.